We are so delighted to bring back these quarterly online events where we have the opportunity to engage in conversations and discussions with yoga teachers in our community who have written books. And it's also an opportunity for us to be engaged with each other. So we hope to learn more about these teachers and authors and how yoga has impacted their life's journey. One of the great things about Books and Brunch with BYTA is that these events are produced and hosted by BYTA members. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge a couple of people. First, our Creative Services Director, Lorenzo Wilkins, who created the beautiful Books and Brunch with BYTA graphics and that groovy, jazzy theme music. It's original. And I also have to give a huge thank you to Advisory Council member and our technical guru, Galanda Booker, who we call Galanda B, for lending her skills and her calming presence to support this event. So thanks to both of them. So now, we don't like to take a lot of time with a lot of verbiage. Let's get right into it. I'd like to turn it over now to the producer and host of this event, Dr. Lucretia Cree Dye. Cree is Associate Professor in the Department of Counseling and Student Affairs at Western Kentucky University, which is in Bowling Green. She's also a certified yoga teacher, and we love her because she has been a member and a supporter of BYTA since the very beginning. So welcome, and hi, Cree.
Okay, hello everyone. Y'all, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be with y'all. And when Janice says that I've been a supporter and a member, as soon as I found out about BYTA, y'all, I was on it. Like every time I'm with BYTA or anything related to BYTA, it feels like a family reunion. So y'all, this just feels like a family reunion to me. So the way that I'd like for us to open up is just by opening with connecting with each other. And if you have access to your chat right now, what I would like everybody to do is let's do a 3-word activity. So in the chat, if you don't mind, type 3 words that come up for you as you reflect on if you were able to read this amazing book, or even 3 words that are present for you right now as you join the community, this BYTA community. So everybody just put in the chat 3 words, and I promise you, you'll enjoy reading what everybody puts. So everybody just put in the chat 3 words so we can connect. Oh, first time at BYTA event. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Powerful, honest, compassionate. Y'all feel those words? I love words. Connection, insight, and learning. You said welcoming, Black, and warm. That just goes together, right? Black and warm just goes together. First time excited, beautiful, beautiful. Evolution, strength. I know those words definitely match the book to me. Community, creativity, yoga. Yes, yes, powerful student, teacher, all of that, y'all. So thank you so much. First time. So happy to have y'all here. And the way that I want us to transition with you all's words right now is I want to invite our sister, the author of this amazing book, The Healing. I want to invite our sister Saeeda to share 3 words that are present for her right now. And that be her kind of introduction as we jump into this, y'all. So Saeeda, come on in the room, girl.
Hello. Okay, should I put in the chat or just say it?
Just say it, sis. Just say it.
So my 3 words are integration, love, and perseverance.
Integration, love, and perseverance. Okay, y'all got those 3 words. So we got those 3 words. And here, I also want to invite you all to be aware of this. So during this discussion, I'm trying to just go let the spirit move me. While I have a list of questions here for our sister Saeeda, I also want to make sure that I'm able to attend to and address you all's questions. So this is what we do. During the discussion, if you have questions, you're welcome to write them in the chat and we'll take a few at the end, unless you all just have so many amazing questions and you put them in there. I'm all about y'all. Let's just flow with the spirit, because didn't we say black and warm go together? So we'll keep it warm, y'all. We'll keep it warm. To start off, how I wanted to start this off, Saeeda, I told you that I love books, I love words, and I'm just excited to hear from you. And I told Saeeda, you all, I said, I just feel like all of us know her. Like we just know her, this sister, like I literally know this sister. Like this is my sister that's been over my house a few times because I've sat with this book reading it. And this beautiful experience of all of us being story keepers, right, y'all? We are all story keepers here to mend the circle of life, right? For ourselves, our family members, for Mother Earth. Just to start that off, I'm thinking about relationships, Saeeda. If you just spoke about one particular relationship throughout this whole beautiful journey of writing this, what relationship is most present for you or seem to be the most influential for you?
Ooh, that's a good, heavy question to select one. And I'll just be frank and honest. The relationship that was most powerful for me is cultivating that relationship with self, from thinking that I was one way, but stepping into a fullness of who I am and what that means. And then seeing how each relationship that I have had in my lifetime mirrored some reflection of what I thought about myself, either one that I need to embody and become more of, or one that I needed to let go and say, no, thank you. I don't want to reflect that. I can choose. So that was really powerful for me, to create this new relationship with self and see myself connected to other people and have choice.
That sister, I love that, because that's exactly what it felt like, is that we were on a journey with you, with this relationship with yourself. And then you had all these like people that were, they were like supportive roles, but this relationship of you. Will you do me a favor? And just in case, for those people who may not have read the book, can you give a summary of that? Like, as you talk about this relationship with self, can you give a summary of the book in general, of like the relationship with you, and then all of this, your casting members are there. Do you mind just sharing a summary of what the book is about in this journey that you had?
Yeah, so the summary for me is that I was on one level asking, like, what is a good life? Or how do I participate in this life? And when I paused to ask that question, the answer was like, well, how do I take care of myself? Let me get into some food courses. How do I compete with sort of this middle class job that I had with in banking? And so then how do I sort of go through and manage that journey in this corporate world? And so I got into food and yoga, and I literally thought I was getting into sort of like creams and sauces, Julia Child's, Martha Stewart kind of thing. Um, and then when I got into this healing class by mistake, I was like, oh, but this sounds so true for me. And so I got to see how who it is I am in being able to, and I want to say maybe manipulate or really get into the experience of, if I'm to do this journey, that I have to look at the past, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to spiritual bypass everything and be like, oh, eat this food, do this yoga posture, and you're going to be happy. But instead, the tool of yoga made me look at me in past trauma. And so yoga has been this tool, or holistic nutrition and yoga, they have been tools for me to move through this journey. Because when you ask the universe, higher power, what is a good life, it's going to answer that question. It's not going to answer what you imagine a good life to be. It's going to really say, okay, you ask what a good life is, I'm going to show you. And for me, saying I have chosen to be this Black woman on this journey at this time in America, um, it came back with like, okay, you need, this is your integrity, this is your journey. Um, and it may not result in millions of dollars. This is more about having a wealthy soul. So that's how I encapsulate this book at this time. Yeah.
And I told you how, and I just said, Deja, I just said that wealthy soul. Like I told you your words, Saeeda, they do something to me. So right when you just said that, I said, that wealthy soul, and the wealthy soul and how it came about. And probably some of the most impactful moments for me in the book were the moments where you were dealing with recognizing that healing requires recognition, right? You were recognizing, and you'd have these moments of going back to these childhood experiences, like just out of the middle of nowhere. You'd be on the bus or wherever you are, and then boom,
Yep.
you just have these moments. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like it literally, you be in the middle of your story, and then boom, here comes a moment from the past. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
I don't mind at all. And I'll take it to this sense where, I use the word spiritual bypass, good life, because also I know as an African American woman growing up, it's like, get your education and things are going to be good. You're going to have the good life. And so I was surprised that in this journey here, I got my education, I got a decent job, and I didn't feel like I was having this good life, particularly when I started to detox from sugar and start moving my body in a deep way, connecting to the organs in my body. Who thinks about that? So, eating well, doing these yoga postures that activate the organs in the body. I didn't realize that I was beginning this deep release. And so, what was underneath that release was this trauma. So, here I'm doing my day to day, like getting up, eating a good breakfast, doing my sun salutations, um, and then normal life, getting on the bus, going to work. But all of that stuff that was numbed was thawing out. And so, here I'm on the bus having an outburst because I'm feeling those feelings from the past. And one of the things that I love about yoga, depending on the teacher that you have, I often got this message that um, you're not by yourself. If something comes up, you have a community of people, maybe starting with your yoga teacher, um, to help you connect to these feelings, right? And your yoga teacher may not be the one that wants to hold space or deal with your feelings at that time, but they know who to refer you to, right? So that's like, I have to say, when Dr. Gail Parker had her book around, restorative yoga for us, boom, like that is for us, like this wealth of knowledge and partnership. And so, what happened for me, I was able to choose to not be afraid of what was coming up, but to also to connect to it and figure out, okay, this is a expression and output from all this good stuff that I've been putting in. Because a lot of times we'll think, oh, I'm doing all these great things. Why aren't I magically better? It's like, not yet. That wasn't my experience. My experience was, okay, here's your next step. And then you have to deal with that next step.
It's so it really is just so good. As I was reading it, and as you described this, one of the things that I wrote down is like this book is like a therapy session, because what, so I'm also a therapist, you all, and as a therapist, it's like people come to me, and what I get from them are just sound bites of their life. I just get sound bites of their life. I don't get the full story of you on the bus and what went on. It's just like a sound bite. I just get these little sound bites. And what I wrote down is that through your yoga practice and you getting in relationship with you, you were able to get this connection with the emotions and acknowledge and not protect against them. It seemed like it just gave you this space for expression and normalizing the things that were going on. And I was wondering as I was writing those notes down, I was like, I wonder, is that why she wrote this book? Did she write
Oh,
this book so people like me could understand this therapy experience that she's having in her life? Like, what was your purpose? Is that why you wrote? That's just me making that up. But why did you write the book? Was it, what was the purpose of it?
so when I started writing, right, um, which was a while back, I wanted to write the panacea, do yoga, eat this food. It was going to be recipes, short story, and fix your life, right? And, but once writing calls for you to look at, um, all of the different sides of who you are if you're going to write something that's engaging. And I remember sending off these query letters to publishers and agents of saying, hey, I have this book, and publishers coming back, oh, we're interested, but is it a how to or is it a memoir? And then so I wrestled with that. Then I found a space where why I wrote this book. Two things. One was that when people would ask me, how did you get into yoga? How did you get into holistic nutrition? I found myself saying the same story. And it wasn't about a recipe at that time. Um, and the story was literally kind of like that first scene in the book. And I thought, this is heavy for a cocktail party when someone's asking you, how and why did you write this book? Or how did you get into yoga? And you're talking about, well, and I go back to my father's experiences with our family. Um, then I got to this point where I thought, okay, we have no idea where this book is going to go, but I want to write a letter to my nieces. And my one niece in particular, I had one niece in mind to tell her how and why our family it's kind of messed up, which is, not always easy to talk about in public. And yeah, it's not rags to riches. It's like, this is who we are, and this is what I could leave her. And so that's how and why I started the book. What letter did I want to give my nieces and nephews at this point as to how and why Auntie Saeeda lives in San Francisco, away from the family, and how did she maneuver and reconcile all of the different things that have happened in our family. So that's really when I anchored in how and why I wanted to write the book. And it became deeper and easier to really explain our family story. And the part that really uplifts me and excites me is the spiritual connection that I have through this book that has been elevated through yoga. And then also talking about how yoga and food raises the vibration in who it is I am as a human on the planet. And so they could see sort of weird, strange, freaky Auntie Saeeda who's into yoga doing this, and how it connects concretely to how we were raised in our families and then our history as African American people. So it got into a deep thread for me. And and now it just really brought my nieces, brought us really a lot closer. We have our Zoom calls and we talk to each other, and they use the book as a basis for filling in some of the things that they didn't get growing up and how it just answered a lot of questions for them. So it just feels really powerful. Um, and yeah, I'm
I
glad that a
wonder,
publisher picked it up,
sister, I
but
wonder, is this a good time then? So are you ready?
okay.
Maybe get in a little bit more about your family experience. Tell us a little bit more about what those nieces are learning or did learn through the book. Even though many of us read it, we haven't heard it from your voice. So some of those experiences.
The way I'll say that is, and those who have read it or looked at different pieces of it, one thing that was surprisingly, in a good way, a shock to me was my mother saying, well, yeah, it all happened. And my father also not denying the book, but saying I wasn't the man I wanted to be. I was not ready for necessarily that. And so I was thinking that it would be much more about um, making me wrong or calling me crazy, but instead they owned it. And my writing teacher was saying, then you wrote something that also didn't feel like it was blaming them. It was just honoring the experiences, taking it as true. And I look at everything as food. So those experiences growing up, that was food that fed me, that I had to digest and process, and then decide, is this going to um, nurture me, or is it towards better health, or is it going to drag me down? And so it was a cyclical process with that. And so I was surprised that my family kind of embraced it. Older brother had the drug addiction problem, was like, be as raw as you want to be. He has a degree in English. He's like, just be raw, tell it, which was so powerful for me as well. Um, and it's hard because the thing is, I remember there was a space where this book was going to be published, and I was sitting on the couch thinking, oh, I can't write anything next. I can't, like, what am I going to do? And then I realized I had to send a letter to my parents to say, I'm looking at publishing this. I want you to be able to see what's coming out. Um, and, here it is. And so, and that was their response. And I was just so glad that the intention of not making them wrong, but just having that our value systems and how we were living it out was different. So we were just different, not wrong. And that, when I begin to look at life and all of the issues that are going on as, you don't have to call somebody wrong, just different. And then how do you move from there? Then it grounds people. You're humanized. You're not othering. And you can be curious. Like, oh, how did you get to that space of thinking that way? And so that's been really powerful for me in the story, and my nieces, particularly that I talk with regularly. Um, they no longer have to make their dads wrong, just different and doing the best that they can. And that this comes from some generational experiences, and that we have the opportunity to shift it. And so it's been really empowering for a lot of us.
So a couple of things, just I'm listening and I'm just like, everything is firing in my brain, sister. First, the statement of different, not wrong. And I don't know how many of y'all brothers and sisters and they recall Dr. Jeremiah Wright, but I sat in one of his speeches one time and he introduced this idea, or it might have been his NAACP speech, but he says different does not equate to deficient. Right. And I just never let go of that. Like different does not equate to deficient. And that's all that I hear you saying, sister. Like different is not wrong. And that was one of my things that I valued in the book, is like the process of sharing with your families as you finish, with your family members as you finish chapters, and how they experienced that and how they still encouraged you. But that just goes to show that we might have a both and a lot of times. Like while this person on one hand created a lot of pain in my life, and I love them.
Yes.
So it's the both and. There's this pain and there's this love, right? So there's a question, and I want to invite you to respond to it because I think it falls right in line with what we're talking about. And this question is from Deja. She says, how do you make peace with yourself for creating the necessary physical distance from your family to protect your mental wellness? And when I'm thinking physical distance, sister, can you talk a little bit about where you grew up and then what that physical distance, like you grew up in one place and then that physical distance ended up in a lot of different places, right?
Yes, yes. So, okay, some of you have this second edition version of the book. And this is one of the outside areas in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I grew up in a place called Norfolk Sales and McKeesport, um, which is a photo of. And then when I had the opportunity to move out here to San Francisco, California, and even in Pittsburgh, I was still creating this distance, right? I was living in a more middle class neighborhood. Dr. Gail Parker knows Shady Side and Squirrel Hill and all of that. And then my family was living in a different area, Braddock, Pennsylvania, etc. So
Can you, real quick, can you tap into when you say family, who that is and what that was like your family composition? I'm sorry to cut you off, but I wanted, as
that's
you talk
okay.
about them, I wanted to throw
Yes,
that.
so two brothers, two sisters, and one of my sisters is a half sister who's like in the middle of our family, and but my mom, was always like, "There's no halves. You have your sister. You have your sister," and so yeah, so that's kind of the family composition there. I was there was the baby, and then there was me. I was second youngest, and in relationship to distance, I know for myself, I just like to do different things. And it was the same with friends, right? I was going to foreign films and exploring the city in a much different way, while also still doing some of the things that my friends were doing. And with my family, that distance for me, I'll sum it up in the word curiosity. I had a different curiosity about the world that I experienced. And I know for my older brother and sister, sometimes it meant more for them to be part of the group and community, even though they may have wanted to change. So they were fitting themselves more into what they thought the parameters were to remain in a community. So for instance, my younger brother, he would have friends that would say, "You think you're better than we are." And I'm like, "You have assistant manager position at the mall. You're not trying to be, it's just like, they're not your friends if they're not cheering you on." That was my response to him. But I feel, kind of dimmed his light to stay in that group where I was just curious, miles away, curious to be out there in the world experiencing different people and not to have the same routine that my community was calling for at that time. So, and then full circle, what ends up happening is family members as well as friends have come back around and are like, "Tell me about this." So then they started to get curious about what this holistic health lifestyle was all about. So the way that I reconciled sort of this distance was I had to remain true to myself, the inner voice. And again, some of you may have read, like part of when I heard an audible voice, I was like, well, this might be the beginning of my mental illness. Like I didn't know. But as long as my inner voice was telling me to do things that I felt were healthy, grounded, and strong, I followed it. And that's the difference between, I think, serving your higher power and your ego. And so I really tried to stay with that. And when I stayed grounded in that, over time, Deja, I was able to understand that I was role modeling and leading for my community as opposed to just trying to stay part of the community. And us as yoga teachers and healers, we often get that call to do and role model first. And that takes some you have to be brave and have courage to do that. And so when I understood that, I kept moving in those steps. And so that's how I connected to the distance. And my inner voice often told me when I was ready to take on and bring others with me, or hey, you still have some healing to do for yourself. Like I was putting that oxygen mask on for me first before I could help anybody else. And that's how I was able to really understand and reconcile that I needed distance to do that healing before I could come back and role model fully. Um, and share what it is that I'm doing. And I got to the point too, I wasn't trying to tell people, oh, eat this, do this, particularly my family. It was, okay, if I'm doing this and things are changing for me, then they should be able to see my light. Otherwise, who wants to follow or connect to someone who doesn't have the light going on for themselves? Like I didn't want to be dogmatic because I read a few books. Hopefully that
Sister,
answers your question.
that and that answer, I hope that answered your question, Deja, but it also opened up some more things that I had thought about. So specifically, you said this inner voice, and like you said, you even referenced it for a second as like, is that me going like dealing with mental illness? I just saw this curious and courageous person throughout the book. Like you were so curious about new things and then also courageous at the same time. And I don't know about y'all, but I see even for myself, sometimes bringing those two together, sometimes I do feel like, wait, am I going crazy? Like I hate to say it that way, but that's exactly how I feel sometimes. This curiosity and this courageousness brings me to these voids or these spaces that just seem like, whoa. So while you had questions for yourself, you had questions for others. Like one of my favorite relationships is Nancy, and I'd like to hear about that. But you also had questions in regards to this food and this transition of like your relationship with food, and then even to these different classes, specifically to the middle class and that relationship there. So are you able to and the reason why I say the middle classes, and also with Nancy, when you found out about her in that house and how she was making change, like that to me was like moving out of this poverty mindset and moving into a different mindset. So somehow in my mind, all of that comes together. Sis, could you help me out with that?
Yeah, my connection and relationship to Nancy, and I was in Atlanta uh, when that was happening, and she was one of my yoga students, and she was showing me this house and how she was every 2 weeks, she would chart out like how much she could spend in connection with how much she could do. And so that was just so um, it had me in a nice state of wonderment, because often we hear this like play the lotto windfall, right? Rags to riches quick. And when I was able to see how she said, okay, I'm going to live in this section of the house, I'm going to shower at the health club. And I don't even know if all that is in the book, um, of all the different steps that she had taken. And I'm going to spend X amount at Home Depot, and I'm going to work on this part of the kitchen. And I'm going to have 3 friends help me do this on this schedule. That empowered me to think change really is your present moment added to your next present moment to your next present moment. And are you going to be engaged? And that's how that relationship influenced me. And it was the same with food, right? You have this whole history of eating and moving in one way, but then it's what are you going to choose for this meal at this time? And, the food was new and different on one level, because I started out with the macrobiotic study uh, discipline, and they were having collard greens every day on the menu, like eat greens every day, but it was prepared differently. And I don't know if I say this in the book, but my macrobiotic teacher, Deborah Barr, and the class was mostly white folks. but when she uplifted eat foods of your culture and heritage, particularly like the grains of millet, which are now coming into play as a little more fashionable, to keep the features of your face. I was like, what? And so it was just really this sense of she was seeing me as a person and not talking about nose too big, lips too wide, etc. It was like, no, eat foods of your African heritage to restore and keep your features so that you can be this African American woman in the world. And that was so different and contrary from a lot of what I was seeing of how to move from low income into the middle class. Like that was a really nice welcoming into holistic eating. And then so that made me curious about, oh, spices are here, and that's how and why food tastes this way in this area because of the original spices here, and this thing is happening, there. And so it was just a nice connect the dots um, aspect. And then it helped me to also not be on automatic because I could own how and why, um, right, all of the foods that our culture um, have been presented with that we had to use and eat to survive, right? And then that concept of can I move from the enslavement table dishes and add these other dishes and look at it a little deeper with, oh, because when you look at high cholesterol and blood pressure um, in different parts of Africa, they don't have necessarily those same type of things. So when they say it's generational, I think to myself, okay, how far back can I go to see if it's really generational, or is it the habits that are generational based on the circumstances that we had to survive in, and then like, okay, now I can help to rewrite that narrative or add my verse to it and see what develops from there, um, and take it as a celebration.
I told you your words capture me. So just now, the how and why sit out in front of me, and then rewrite the verse, like you add your verse to it. I'm just chewing on that for a second. The how and why, and specifically, Jana has a question about the how and why, and it makes me think about her question as well. She says we hear and use the terms upper, middle, and lower class, upper,
Mhm.
middle, and lower income. Do you see them as mutually inclusive, or can they be mutually exclusive? And as you're talking about your relationship with food, it really feels like this is connected. Can you talk a little bit about that? The how and why, as you talked about that food, and then also this relationship with class.
You talked about my journey having sort of the different, and I don't know if you said here, but like archetypes of just seeing me as, um, different composites of a woman uh, in this. And so the shadow side of me, like I wanted all the status trappings and that kind of thing. And what happened for me with this journey is, I don't think that low income and class definition is mutually exclusive of each other, right? So I remember making a decision that I was going to pay more for what went into my body than what went on my body. So that was, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'd rather buy this food at this time that's seemingly expensive, mostly because of marketing, because grains and beans and grains really are not, should not be that expensive. Okay, so that's one. Um, but then I realized, oh, I'm gonna not really be getting my nails done. So then now we have that back to that Nancy thing of like, how are you gonna choose to spend your money? You're gonna spend it here, or spend it here. And so that's what was happening with me, where it's just like, oh yeah. And I wasn't other like other people are making choices too. And so when I teach the holistic health classes, I just bring that in as right now, finite amount of resources, you can choose to spend X here or to spend X there. Because I would have people in my classes to say, um, oh, eating healthy or eating this way is expensive. And I say, yes, on some level. However, and I would ask, I was like, oh, do you have a favorite coffee drink that you, and they would spend $5 a day on a very expensive coffee drink every day. And I'm not judging it. I'm just saying now you can choose. Like if you know you have $30 or so, $35 a week on coffee, you can make choices there compared to how you want to do fruits and veggies for your family. So it's really just interesting conversation around that. And then it's the same with, people who I've seen have lots of wealth and their diet is McDonald's. And I was like, oh, wow, you actually choose McDonald's and you have resources to buy to do lots of things. Um, so I don't see them as mutually exclusive. I think it's a combination of, and like I was saying too, wealthy soul versus bank account wealth. Yeah, can have both. Um, and I laugh till this day because one of my close friends, just out of the blue, had said to me, like, you're the wealthiest person I know. Like, you know, you have lots of these riches, and it stunned me. And she just said, because have the opportunity to truly merge and engage with the life that that has been given to me, that I choose, and to fully be present.
I hear in your last few words, sister, I hear perspective. I hear it really is about perspective. And when you said, I'm going to choose to spend more for what I put in my body than on my body, and just it really is a choice, like in every, like love is a choice, right? But in these choices, like I'm just chewing on that again. I'm chewing on this again. And y'all, I got to get silly for a second, because the first thing that popped in my mind, sister, as you were saying that, I've been seeing so many posts lately about people talking about the gas prices. And somebody posted and said, I know y'all designers got to be fake the way y'all complaining about this gas. Because it's just like all about perspective, right? Like I'm going to choose to pay more for what I put in my body and what I value. And different doesn't equate to deficient. It's just different, right? We're going to go back to that. But speaking of like some of these choices, sister, your sugar. And we all know, and being in the US and across the globe, our standard American diet and the sugar, 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 and everybody being addicted to sugar. How did it feel to detox? Talk a little bit about the impact of yoga on that decision and just you and your sugar life.
Yeah, sugar's a tough one, right? They say if it was created today, it would not pass the Food Drug Administration to be a substance processed a lot like cocaine, goes directly into the blood system quite quick. Um, and it's in everything, right? They started putting it in everything um, because it's cheaper on some level. Continues people to be hooked on, various types of foods. And I know for me, the nice thing I learned about sugar was just how it was such a numbing effect for me in terms of my past. And once you give yourself an opportunity to reset and detox from sugar, you can do it cold turkey or, um, gradually. But it's an experience that I actually encourage everyone to try at least once. I'm not saying you have to be off sugar or not enjoy your baked goods, etc. But who are you without it? That's all I'm asking folks to get curious about. Like, who am I without it? Um, and and start journaling. Start your own journey. Start your second part of the healing, however it goes. Because it's. I guess I just was surprised at how sad I felt. Just how sad, like so much sadness. And I was like, wow, have I been masking this um, for so many years and didn't know? I didn't know. I mean, I sold penny candy in grade school because I was hustling. I was hustling since I was 7. I was like, all right, my parents can't get me new clothes for school or at the Kennywood picnic. Those who remember Pittsburgh, um, I need and so yeah, in school I think I didn't necessarily always appear poor, um, but right, and candy was a way to fuel the bank account, my penny bank account, so to speak, or what do you call that? Yeah, home bank account. Um, sugar has many layers, and I just invite you to try it, to detox, to even to begin to look at what is in your food um, via the ingredients list.
I um I
So, um,
that just so this makes me think about this real quick. I used to be an elementary school counselor, sister, and I was in Michigan, and I worked in 2 different schools. I was in a very suburban wealthy school, and I was in a school like right in the middle of, low resources. So one of my projects, the activities I did with the fourth and fifth graders was we would research what they would, everything they ate, because hot Cheetos was one of
yep.
their number one things, hot Cheetos and those Takis. Y'all know that stuff? So what I told them to do, we were going to become researchers. And I said, we'll take the back of the bag and we will look up every single word that's on here and learn what we're putting in our bodies, right? So listen to this. When I tell you, we start doing that and then even start looking at like Taco Bell and Burger King and McDonald's and what they were eating, we start researching that. Do you know I had to go to administration because we had parents calling said tell her to quit teaching our kids what's in their food unless she gonna start buying their food. But these babies used to go
Yes.
home and say, I
Yes.
don't want to eat no
Yes.
more Taco Bell, or I don't want to eat no more of this processed stuff, because they start researching themselves what's in this food. And when they found out about sugar, like all of those words, like dextrose, monodextrose, like all of those words, and just what was in it, those babies were like, I don't want nothing to do with it. That just made me think of that,
It's
sister, as you
true.
were talking.
Well, so some of you know I'm in the education system and now I'm doing more wellness policy work, but I've had a similar experience where I was teaching more just around, food groupings. And I remember a grandmother came to me and said, um, harder. And she said, well, you know, for destiny, I had some chicken and rice on her plate. And this is the kindergartner. And she said, well, Miss Saeeda said, I said, okay. And then the grandmother said to me, well, so I had to go to the freezer and defrost some broccoli, and like she just ran it down. And for me, that was a good scolding, from the grandmother to me, and an understanding that the lessons are getting through. But you're right, the parents are there's that part, and then I had parents of saying, "How did you get my kid to eat broccoli?" Because the kids want to be involved in the preparation of the food. And when I have given my kindergartners through fifth grade metal cooking knives, and they're cutting and they're careful, um, they they all, I love it because when you walk around, they all turn into what I call old black women in the kitchen, because they're cutting their veggies. And mind you, there's like 5, 6 years old, and they're telling their stories. Well, this happened in my house this last night, and it's a cooking therapy, and you get to know so much of what's going on, but you also know that they are building community and healing with each other over, cutting carrots and making, butterfly edible foods together with celery and olives, and so we just have a good time. But you're right, and that's the thing of getting them curious, and eating the food that they're preparing at that time. Um, and I realized that when we cook with kids, because a lot of times parents are just saying, I don't have the time. And it's really, so they're grabbing the faster food. Um, but the kids, all they have is time. And I said, well, teach them enough. And then before you know it, they'll be able to have some prep stuff done for you. And they're engaged in keeping the family cooking together.
This is you developing that next book, y'all. Y'all hear it? Like, I'm like, I want to hear more about this and your experience with these children. This is the next book just batching itself on.
That's funny because I think that's where the publisher would like me to go, and I haven't decided on next steps of a next book.
Well,
They
I'm
said no
loving it.
pressure, so
Okay, well, that's what I'm hearing, sis. So I am clairvoyant and clairsentient in a lot of ways. So just to let you know, no, I'm just teasing. But respecting the time, family, there were a few questions that I want to try to hit back on, if that's okay, sister.
yes.
Oh, specifically, Deja had a question, and I'm sure a lot of people in here would like to hear your response. Can you talk about the increase in, especially post 2020, Black women yoga teachers, what you recommend on a practical level for new Black women yoga teachers who are teaching in homogeneous white spaces? Can you just tap on that? And we have about 8 minutes. So I just want to give that to you. And just in case other questions come up, I'd like to take at least one more.
One is show up as your full, authentic self. And I'm going to go a little bit spiritual in this realm. Melanated folks have, I want to say, a more active, powerful pineal and pituitary connection, that our vibration put out in these yoga classes are extremely healing for ourselves and for others. So remember that. And the other thing is, keep role modeling who you are and not feel diminished in any space. And change the language. If you are the instructor, change the language, right? And I'm learning and starting to do that even more, right? So there's this talk around white supremacy, structure, and language in our yoga classes. And when you're in white spaces, you can use language that builds more community, that's inclusive, that's not of what current US dominant culture is. Use, okay, Jenna, correct me if I'm using this correctly or not, the majority of our global majority.
The global majority.
Global majority.
People of the global majority.
People of the global majority language. And folks will feel that and lead. Just know that you are there to lead. If you're in that space, you have been called to be in that space. And don't be afraid to take a pause when you see or feel or hear something that's not in alignment with who you are in your spirit. Pause, and then you can respond as opposed to react.
I love that, sis. You said, don't be afraid. Y'all hear that? 1, don't be afraid. 2, pause. Y'all know what that pause is about, that breathe and ground yourself, gather you, right? And then, and then move. And I love that because I'm teaching in all of those spaces, y'all. So we got one more question. In this post-pandemic climate, how do you make virtual yoga class experiences as warm and vibrational as in person? Can you even do that? But this person must not have been here at the beginning because Black equals warm. Remember that? Black equals warm. So you just show up Black. No, I'm just being silly. Go ahead, sis. Go ahead.
Well, so I'm definitely learning from the Black Yoga Teachers Alliance how this works, because the music was great. When you shift the music, and I love how you opened it up, Dr. Cree, with give me 3 words. Like, there's something about how Zoom and virtual spaces um, can be made warm. And so I'm going to say it in this way. You are a spirit living in your African diasporic body. The vibration is there. So whether you're coming through a camera or the person in the room, know that your vibration expands and connects, right? So here it's squares, but we can all imagine the circle. So that's how I've been able to, and I haven't taught a lot of virtual classes, but I just last month in December and February, a woman in Italy, and I don't speak Italian, but she said, I want your vibration leading this restorative, this yoga class, and how different things reside or live in the organ. So we were doing that, and I was just amazed that she thought, and I shouldn't have been too surprised if I'm believing right what I'm saying now, that the vibration from here, where I am here in San Francisco, through the Zoom room, touched and connected to the folks in Italy and in England. And just like being part of the retreat online, I was blown away. That was my first retreat, and I was like, oh man, invited. Like, I felt like I was in the room with everyone from South Africa to Grenada to, the US. And we just have to remember that vibrationally and collectively in our sphere. Don't put the block up, right? Don't block the blessing. Don't block the transmission. People feel it. People feel
That's
it.
good. That's it. That's it right there. So y'all, let's keep with this warm. Let's keep with this vibration. And I have one more prompt for everybody. So this is how we'll stay connected to you, Saeeda, because I know I have been fed by you. I want to say that. I want to invite everybody else dreaming forward. This is our little prompt. What did you receive? How did our sister feed you? And whether you want to put one word or a couple of words, I know right now I feel full from reading this, and I feel inspired. So anybody else want to connect, go ahead and drop your words over there. We'll read them and enjoy them as you drop them, just so we can close out with do not block the vibration. Come on, come on. Love inspired, teach the children, encouraged me, lifted, right, y'all? Y'all hear that? Peace. Okay, inspired, guidance. This is how our sister fed us. Wisdom, inspired. Those are just great words popping across the screen, y'all. Going to check my daily sugar intake. I don't know who said that. They sent it as a secret message, so I ain't gonna tell y'all who said that. Yes, warm soul. Reminder that we are high vibrational beings resonating with the, oh my gosh. So I just say, everybody, let's bring our palms together right here, at our hearts. And just, you know what I like to do, even if we're on this screen, y'all know who I bow to right now. I bow to y'all, and I invite you all to bow to each other. So I just want to bow to you and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, sister. And I bow to each of you who came here for yourselves and for us, right? So yes. So thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you, BYTA. Thank you, Jana. Thank you, Dr. Gail. Thank you, thank you, thank you, ancestors. Thank you to everybody.
The seen and the unseen. Thank you.
Thank you for that book that's on its way that we're ready to read, sis.
The new one. Yeah.
All right. Y'all have a good
That's
one.
great. Thank you all.